1, 2, 3. Tag me in podcast.
Even to this day, I'm angry with myself for being in that state, and my work, the job I had came to an end. Now, it wouldn't have come to an end if I wasn't in that state.
Tag Me In Podcast, back again with another episode. You're joined by myself, Ola.
And also Anton.
Brilliant. And today we are here with a special guest to talk about a sort of fairly serious topic. For the purposes of recording and for the purposes of his safety and security, we will be using a pseudonym, and that name will be Michael. So I've personally known Michael pretty much all my life. Family friends, we've always been family friends. Parents have been really, really close. And I've just known him to be an amazing artist. Whenever I went to his house, he was always happy, energetic, would always scream my name whenever I came, was excited to see me and my siblings. And I just knew him for his art. That was the one thing I always sort of knew him for. Good at sculptures, painting, pictures, and just expression through the creative industry of art. And I remember just kind of growing up, I started to see him a lot less and less over the years. And I remember he sort of moved away to a different town. He'd settled down, had a wife, had a child. And then sort of in recent years, I just sort of noticed a slight difference in him. But again, I hadn't sort of put two and two together. Anyway, long story short, we sort of found out that he had been dealing with depression, which is a fairly common problem in today's society. And in certain cultures and families, it isn't openly spoken about. It is usually sort of seen as something that can be prayed away or taken away with paracetamol. But the reality is that isn't always the case. It is a lot more serious than that. And I think there needs to be a lot more attention and spotlight on it in terms of what it is, what it means to be depressed, how to actually come to grips and accept it, how to deal with it, and how to live with it, most importantly. Because we can pretend all we want, but if something's there, it is there and we can't hide it away. And that is what today's topic will center around. So, Michael, thank you for joining us. Again, we really appreciate you being here. I know it wasn't easy, but again, as we said, we know how important your story is to share with others and to sort of hear about that. So what I thought we'd do is just kind of start with a bit about yourself. If you just tell us, a bit more about your art and your passion, and then we'll sort of go into it from there.
Well, by training, I'm an artist, a sculptor, and painter. So I've been doing that for years. Then I came to a point where I wanted to bring my my sculptures to a more wider audience and put into a context. So I made films incorporating with my artwork incorporated into these films, and then from there I decided to go a bit into drama, bit of acting myself, and playing characters. I'm just a very creative person. So many outlets. I use creativity to express myself, my hopes, my fears, dreams, possibilities. Yeah.
And I guess that's always sort of been the case with you. It's always sort of been, art has been that form of expression for those emotions. And
So it's always been, yeah.
And I guess again, sort of over the years, I remember sort of you getting married, and then me and you have had discussions on, finding the right partner and sort of settling down and having a family. And I remember, and maybe I have it wrong, so if I'm incorrect, do correct me. Speaking about sort of depression, I felt as though, and I guess I experienced some of it having lived in Bristol. I reckon that I saw that change in you when you moved away. So when you moved to Birmingham,
Leicester.
Sorry, I was Leicester. you know, you were sort of away from family, away from friends, in a sort of different environment. And similar to when, and I don't know if you've ever felt this, Anton, but when I was in Bristol, away from family, away from friends, yes, I had made new friends in Bristol, but my primary sort of home or environment I was away from.
It's that readjustment. To
readjustment, yeah.
They state that I think it's 1 in 5 people kind of deal with isolation or loneliness.
Yeah.
And it does happen when you do move into a new town, a new city.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, understandable because you've taken yourself away from what has been deemed as home.
Yeah.
And you've created a new place and you have to reconnect or connect or form new connection with people.
And adjust, precisely. And in Bristol, I sort of felt like, you know, where is everyone? And I found myself, once I got a car, driving down to London almost every weekend to kind of make sure I rekindled that kind of attachment. And I've spoken to other friends who've moved to other cities who felt the same. So I don't know if it was when you moved to Leicester that you maybe started to notice a difference in sort of how you felt in terms of connection to family and friends.
I think moving to Leicester, it coincided with me having a change of heart towards my wife, and feeling no longer that I wanted to be with her for the rest of my life. So moving to Leicester, it coincided with the breakup of the relationship, and then with the breakup of the relationship and moving out of the house, then that's when the sense of isolation really came, because I was within a year and a half of moving, it's separated, and I was in a town which I didn't know, wasn't really liking aspects of my job and my work, and because I'm from a very church background, and me and my wife and my son, we were going to church, so we were developing those church relationships. But because I decided, but due to the separation, and I had a change of faith as well, I just began to question and doubt a lot religion and belief. So I wasn't attending a church, so I didn't have that even support of network of church friends. So it became lonely and isolating. I was in a town that I was unfamiliar with. I'd broken up. I'd separated from my wife. And I didn't really have, apart from one friend, the friends I had made at the beginning were from church. So since I was separated and I left the church, so wasn't able to keep up those kind of those friendships from church. Just didn't seem right. So I had I'd say one good friend. But yeah, it just became lonely and isolating, and it added to my sense of depression and being alone.
And sort of on that point of sort of feeling the isolation, I remember, I don't know if you remember when I came down to see you. That one time I sort of rented a car, I drove down.
Yeah.
I got lost so many times. It was like one of my first times driving. I was just excited because I had my license. And I remember I came to sort of see you, and you were sort of in this, it was like a bed sit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember it was sort of a bed sit, and I remember just sort of thinking, even I sort of felt it in that place, because I remember that you said that you sort of moved out of the marital home and you were there.
Yeah.
And I just sort of remember thinking, you know, I knew that in that environment, I myself would sort of struggle. And I remember when we went to go and see your son, I remember sort of saying, just move back. I remember I was just kept saying to you, come back here. At least you've got, it's because I sort of felt you're alone enough being in Leicester, but then being away from the family union that you've come with.
Yeah.
I just sort of knew that me personally, I wouldn't be able to sort of handle that. Just knowing that, being in that sort of situation. I remember I kept saying to you, just come back, even if it was in a separate room or wherever it was, but I knew that at least you'd have some level of interaction or connection, and, who better than to be in the house with than your son, sort of thing. So I sort of remember that sort of vividly, and I sort of made a conscious effort to always sort of reach out and to sort of make sure that you were okay, and just to, because again, I can only imagine how difficult it would have been. Again, I think I was fortunate that I found Anton. I made other friends in Bristol, and there was a small community of people for me to connect with at work, outside of work. There was a growing sort of BME community as well, which was even better. So people who wanted what I wanted. But again, I was fortunate enough to have that. I wasn't aware that was available where you were. And when you told me about your job and the hours you were doing, because I remember they were quite unsocial, weren't they?
Yeah, 24-hour shift.
It was 20. Imagine doing a 24-hour shift, Anton. Wow. Yeah, so you're not really in an environment where you can meet people.
It's also the element of just your health, sleep patterns,
well-being,
and just well-being in general. I guess one thing that might be important is, for the listeners, really, is how would you describe depression?
I'd describe it as a room that gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and you start to feel trapped in your own thoughts, in your own loneliness, in your own despair, and you lose perspective on life, on the good things in life. The things that you used to appreciate, you no longer appreciate them, and it's a spiral. It's spiral out of control. I mean, I was speaking for myself. It was, sometimes I felt that my depression was like a cloud. I likened it to a cloud that would just fall upon me, a cloud of despondency, a cloud of fear, a cloud of doubt. I had been married for, at least, 11 good years, 10 to 11 good years, and it was good marriage, we had a good relationship, but and also, I mean, me and my ex, we met in church. We worked for the church. We served in church. We were well known in church, and So for me to step away from that and to feel that, I didn't want to be in a relationship, didn't want to continue the relationship. It was such a mind shift for me to come to acceptance, and then the consequences of that, the guilt, the shame, the pain that I caused her. The subsequent pain on my son, it just weighed me down. It weighed heavily upon my mind, and it began to eat at me. And there was a clash between the man that I used to be and the man that I was becoming. I called it a bit of it was a bit of a midlife crisis. I did label that, but I'd gone through a really big change, and in acknowledging the change in my life, I just didn't cope with it. Didn't cope with it well. Wasn't able to control my emotions, and yeah. So my family had to step in, because while I was away in a different city, when my family found out the state I was in, my brother came to straight away want me back to London, and came out to London, and I started to feel, I was around the familiar, started to feel better, got a job, all was going well. I was still keeping contact with my son, going to see him every 2 weeks, but then the cloud just came again. Sometimes the depression, you have moments when you think it's gone, but then something can trigger it. I was walking in a park close to where I used to live with my son and my ex, and that triggered off memories, and that brought about a downward spiral where I stayed in my room. I couldn't think straight. At times I was getting delusional. My speech would change. My speech would become inhibited. Started to didn't want to see anybody. Lock myself away in my room. There were times when I could be just in my room for 24 hours, not talk to anybody, not socialize, and started thinking I started getting conflicted, thinking I was a bad person because I'd caused the breakup of a relationship. Started feeling guilt. How my son, cope in the future? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen to him? Is he gonna turn out to hate his dad because his dad left his mum? So I was battling with all these things, and she was a good woman. She's a good woman. His mum's a good woman. She was good. She was good to me, and for me to bring the relationship to an end, it was so hurtful for her, because she thought we'd be together for the rest of our lives. So all these things to get together on my mind, I couldn't cope. I had to get a medication. I had to go hospital. That in itself was a humbling experience, because I had to accept there were times when I couldn't keep myself safe. I felt I'd caused so much damage and lost perspective. My head was, there were times I was battling with voices telling me, go and kill yourself. You've stuffed up. You've destroyed somebody. You've messed up the life of your son's mum. And I just started beating myself up. Started really eating up at me, and then I started getting conflicted with it. Although I was kind of like coming out of religion, but I still remembered all the old verses, and you shouldn't leave your marriage, and stay together, and what God has brought together, no man should. So all these things I started to really struggle with, and it started to really bombard my mind, and I wanted an escape. Sometimes I wanted to escape, and there are times when I thought to myself, one escape would be, just just to commit suicide, and and I was bombarded at times with suicidal thoughts. And it's a real, and I'm looking back, and I do feel ashamed of having those thoughts, because as a man you should be stronger. What I was going through, other people have been through it and coped and managed, but I definitely wasn't coping well, and I felt ashamed, and I felt ashamed to say that I was so weak and so vulnerable. Other people, family were supportive, giving me advice. I felt guilty for putting my family through the stress, because they had to look after me. Eventually, I went to admit myself to hospital, volunteered to go to hospital. And they gave me some medication, got some counselling. And I'm still getting counselling, now. That's ongoing, and it does help to speak to somebody who is not doesn't know you, an outsider who can think more objectively, and who can help you to unravel some of the things that are going on in your mind. So I do strongly advise, people who's suffering depression and to try and get a counsellor. It can help.
So at what point would you say that you kind of felt that you needed to seek help? Or was it from...
because I knew suicide wasn't the way forward. I remember, I wouldn't be fair on my son. I love my son, and and I want to see my son grow up mature and be a man, be an adult. So I didn't want to do that to him. That's a terrible thing for a child to have to go through. And so I had to say to myself that life is worth living, and I had to hold on to because in my mind, when I got married, I didn't think that I would ever get divorced. I didn't think that I would have become to a point where I have a change of heart. Mm-hmm. Didn't think that, and also not only a change of heart, but also a change religiously. I didn't think I'd come to a point where I would doubt God's existence and all the stuff that I learned, and the foundation that had given me such a platform. I didn't think, but there's something sometimes to accept that. As people, we change. Mm-hmm. I got married when I was 27. I'm now 41. So it's quite some time that's elapsed since 27 to 41. And the man I was at 27 years old, I'm not the same man today.
Yeah.
And I had to come to that place of acceptance and hold on to the positive things that we have. Me and his mum, we have a good relationship. I see, I've got free access to my son, which not everybody has. So I had to hold on to the positive things, and that's some of the things that got me through, together with medication and changing my mind. But it's just something something I still struggle with, and maybe I'm always gonna, I'm always gonna have that struggle, if for the the rest of my life. It's about managing it and not letting it affect your day-to-day life. I mean, due to depression, I gave up a job that I really liked. There were times I was too ill to see my son, or see friends. So depression, it has an impact. It has an immediate impact upon one's life and upon family, and it's it robs you. It robs you of the goodness and richness of what life is and what it can be, and it distorts your mind. This depression distorts your mind. Just a couple of months ago, maybe beginning of this year, a mutual friend, somebody that I know of. My ex's friend, she committed suicide, and she had two boys. And that's what it does. Depression it dims the lights. It turns the light down in your life, and things go darker. The room gets smaller, and you feel there's no escape, and you feel that what you're feeling is going to be a constant thing. And I tell people it's not constant. The depression, the aching, the pain, whatever it is that you're feeling, however it is you describe your mental struggle, is it's temporary. It's not going to be there forever. Especially not that. Sometimes there's moments where it's quite intense. That intensity isn't going to last forever. And there is help. There is hope. There is better days, and whether that hope could come from God. You could find that hope in family, wherever that hope is. You need to hold on to it and really believe and I think for me, I'm learning to forgive yourself. You might have to forgive other people. You might be in a situation where you're low or you're depressed because of what's happened to you outside of your control. So in that situation, you need to learn somehow to forgive what's been done to you. And if you're the person who's caused pain and caused damage and done things that are wrong, then you will learn to forgive yourself. Because if you can only eat yourself for so long, and the more you eat yourself, it's only going to lead to one conclusion. So at the moment, I'm better. I'm more stable, focused on the future, and I'm looking forward to possibilities. I'm aware that it's there. The mental struggle that I have, it's there. It's not going to disappear. I'm just learning to manage that on a day-to-day basis and speak against it, and rather than confess negativity, to speak positivity, and to really channel those that inner disruption. Yeah,
I love how you've sort of continuously mentioned bringing up kind of like positive emotions and memories to kind of help you get through darker times. Just going back a bit, I guess when the sort of dark clouds started and you sort of started feeling these feelings of depression, were you aware that it was depression, or did you feel it was, or were you unaware? Did you just think it was just a really bad day?
I think I was aware depression, yeah, because my whole countenance changed, my whole demeanor changed. I knew that definitely something was wrong.
And were you ever sort of open with it? So with the ex-wife, with your son, and obviously I know you mentioned your family coming to pick you up.
Yeah, I was open. I mean, you know, thankfully, you know, brother and sister who are understanding and really supportive. My parents were supportive, but I think they also frustrated because they, you know, they couldn't see what the problem was. You know, my parents were thinking, okay, you've left your wife, move on, meet another woman, get married again, have more children. They thought that, you know, I should be able to easily close that chapter and start afresh and begin a new life. And even today they're expecting it. But that's just, you know, that's their culture. That's the way they were brought up to. That's how they feel things should be. Things should be handled. So there is tension. There is tension there. You know, my father thinks, you know, I should meet another woman, get married again, have more children. I personally don't think I want to have any more children. I don't necessarily think I want to get married again. I could be with somebody. I could be with somebody who's got children. You know what I mean? But I don't necessarily think I want to have biological children again. But it's not a conversation I could have with my dad, really, because his cultural expectation is so that, you know, as night follows day, you know, man is put on earth to bear children, and that's your responsibility, and that's part of, you know, the circle of life. And you know, he thinks I should be able to just leave my son alone and let him get on with life and check in now and then, but just be focused on a new life and meeting a new woman. But I'm just not of that mindset. So there's a clash. There's a clash there between the expectations, what your parents expecting of you, but what you feel inward and yeah.
But I guess so. A sort of follow on from that, on that point, for parents who are in a position where parents or siblings or anyone who's in a position where they've got a child or a family member who is dealing with depression, what if you could sort of say to them, and I guess essentially sort of say to your father, what is the message for them? How can they be supportive and show love? Because like you said, everyone has come from sort of different cultures, and
it's you know, to give your children, give them time, and it might be a bit of a roller coaster. They might get better, then lapse, and then I get better again, and you know, and lapse, which I have done. There's times I've been better, and then times I've lapsed. But that is part of, you know, that is part of depression. You don't just come out of it and then all is plain sailing like that. So you have to be patient with your if you've got a sibling who's going through it, if you have a child going through it. Just be patient and supportive, and know that it would take time, and listen. Even though the person probably said the same thing over and again so many times, just be there to listen and be a soundboard. And try not to. Sometimes you might try to judge, you know, have a bit of a detachment, because you know, if your family members depressed and they are talking about, you know, things about ending their life and stuff like that, that can be quite distressing as a family member to hear that. So it's hard, but they also need to have some kind of detachment from it, and just for them to understand and for them to realize when it's getting too much. So family members say, okay, look, we need to call a doctor. We need to take you to hospital. It's too much for us to handle. You need specialist care, and sometimes, as families need to accept that, because there is the tendency to keep it private and say, oh, it will go away. Let's go and see this spiritualist or specialist or pray about it. You're fighting some demons. I mean, there's a reluctance to go to the doctor to help or to seek counseling. But yeah, so I think for family members who have loved ones who are struggling with it, they need to be aware that at times it's out of your hands. Just take them to a place where they can get additional support.
Yeah, I guess I can give a kind of personal account in terms of I've witnessed family, I've witnessed friends who've kind of dealt with depression, and I've also been in a position where I had an ex-girlfriend who was dealing with depression, and it got to a point, like you were saying, where within, as in a person trying to support someone, you can't do anymore, and you have to go to that person, and it's very hard to have that conversation and say you need to see someone.
Yeah,
it's the most difficult conversation to have, because you care for them and you don't want them, because there's an element of judgment that comes with it.
Yeah.
Because then you're placing a label on someone because you're thinking, I think you may have depression. For me, I was in a position of I did psychology, so I knew a bit more about it, in comparison to someone else who might not know about it. So I was like with her for quite a long time. There was moments where she was in a cloudy moment. So all the words that you described, foggy, there'd be days where she'd be in bed for like 2 days and not eating, showering, anything like that.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you listen to the person and they say they're fine, they're okay, just a bad moment. But if it continues to happen, then that's when you have to, pluck up that courage and speak to them. And then there's been other moments where at university I had a friend who was very suicidal, and they kind of came to me and opened up about it. And you do feel that, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just when you have moments. There's one time I came out of I think I was in university, I came out to Taekwondo, and there was an ambulance right in front of our block of flats. My mind automatically went into a panic stage thinking, oh my gosh, what happened? Went up to the room, and there was paramedics in her room, but it was all because she had a panic attack, and it wasn't because she was, doing anything that was kind of harmful towards her. But your mind just, races. And I think sometimes you also, if you're going to be supportive in an element, you also have to be aware of how much you can handle. You do have to understand what depression is, first of all, because you don't want to be judgmental in the sense of being your cultural preference or understanding of everything. You do have to be in a position of just listening because you're not in that person's shoe, and it's very difficult to, you know, I remember very naive. I was probably, the first time it kind of happened, I think I was like 17. I was like, can you not just, you know, get out? You know, it's very, I'm very naive in saying this, but at that time, I was like, can you not just have a shower, go for a walk?
Yeah, you know what, and I think and there were times people would say that to you, yeah, you know, just get out of your bed, just, you know, go for a walk, and it seems so simple, but at that time, when you're going through that, when you're going through when you're in that dark cloud, it just seems something that you're just incapable of, or everything else seems to be irrelevant. Times you lose appetite. The things that you enjoy, you don't enjoy no more. You all you see around you. You just succumb to a defeatist mentality. Just that's all you can see is doom, and doom and gloom. So to the outside, it seems that you're taking, you know, that you're not even trying. It seems that, you know what I mean, you're deliberately being like this. But to the person going through it, it's hard to break out of it. It's hard to break out of that mentality. There is a bit, you know, there is a bit about self-pity, wallowing, and at times I was aware that, you know what, I'm just wallowing, just feeling sorry for myself, and staying in bed, you know, when I shouldn't be staying in bed for too long, and I think something you need to realize that, you know, when you're going through depression, the world doesn't stop. Everything's still going on around you. You might be stopping. You might be, you know, in a state where you can't take care of yourself. You can't do nothing. You don't want to socialize. Don't want to interact. But the world around you continues, and you're missing out. It's only when you come out of the depression, when you're better, then you realize, oh, you know, look, I've missed this opportunity. I've missed that opportunity. That's when it starts to really dawn on you. And I know for myself, and that's when I get even angry with myself. I said to myself, you know what? Those days you were ill. Look, you know, look at this opportunities. Look at the things that's gone by. Even to this day, I'm angry with myself for being in that state, and my work, the job I had came to an end. Now, it wouldn't have come to an end if I wasn't in that state, if I hadn't gone through depression. And when you're going through depression, you make decisions which, in your right mind, you wouldn't make those decisions. So I gave up. You know, in my right mind, I wouldn't have given up on a job. But your judgment becomes clouded and distorted. So that's another thing. As hard as it is, when you're depressed, try not to make rash decisions. It's not a time. It's not a good time to be making big decisions, because you're not in your right state of mind, and you're going to make decisions that you later regret.
Have you put anything in place for those sort of moments where you might be in one of your kind of cycles, and it might be because like you were saying, life is always going to be demanding, knocking on your door.
Yeah.
Have you put anything in place, like whether you're writing it down, if you have like a flowchart system or anything?
Yeah, I've got I mean, first I kind of remind myself that of all the positive things that I have. I've got things written down on my wall. Statements. Listening to motivational speakers on YouTube. There's some really good motivational speakers there. And that's not necessarily doesn't have to be religious based. And those motivational speakers, they challenge you to seek inside yourself and to change your way of thinking and your mentality. And because sometimes the way you've programmed your mind, the way you program your mind is programmed. Sometimes it needs rewiring. So you really have to change your mindset, and you have to see yourself as somebody who's worth loving. Because they say you know, how can people love you? How can you expect others to love you when you can't love yourself?
You gotta love yourself.
You have to.
Else.
Yeah. If you got, you know, if you don't feel any self-worth, and you know, and you're down on yourself, and you're thinking nothing, and you can't do this, and you can't do that, and you're a failure, then that's gonna manifest in your actions. So you really have to you really have to learn to talk to yourself and program yourself and change your thought process, especially when you're going through depression, because you can easily slip, and you have to be careful the words you say to yourself. So words have power.
Yes.
So it is hard. I've got, you know, I've got numbers of hospital and it's called a crisis team that I can contact. So it's good to have that support. I've got a counsellor that I can share. So if I feel that I'm going low, I can speak to them. Yeah.
And it's also important because they're not people that are connected to you. It's that external sort of point, isn't it, as well? So.
Objective, yeah. A question a little earlier, you sort of mentioned obviously having the support of, you know, your siblings, and I remember when your brother did come to Leicester to get you. For friends of people going through cycles or dealing with depression, are there any? I guess I know there's no one size fits all, but are there any sort of obvious tell signs that people can look out for in friends and family to just be observant about? And
they be withdrawn. People become withdrawn and not answering their phone, not wanting to interact, spending a lot of time alone. Or sometimes it could be, you know, people start to behave erratically. Start doing things that are out of character. They could be, you know, going through a depression or having a psychotic moment, because, you know, depression, not only is it can be, you know, feeling down and feeling low, but linked to that is also manic. I mean, you've heard of bipolar, where you can have extreme highs, and extreme lows, and when you're high, you could be doing things out of character, spending more money than you normally would, you know, speaking to people that you wouldn't normally speak to, buying things that on impulse, just not thinking straight. You know, people start behaving erratically. So that's a sign to look out for. Just as well as somebody who's being low and withdrawing themselves, but then somebody who's doing things that are erratic. That's a sign that, you know, something that there could be a bit of a mental disorder there, and they need support.
Yeah, as you were going through the description of being withdrawn, I personally put up my hand, and there's a lot of times where I will withdraw myself from social settings because, you know, as you were speaking, there's a lot of things where sometimes I get myself into a state of low where I'm just like, I want a time off, I want a break. Work's demanding, probably podcasts, I haven't had a break, and there is probably a moment where I get a peace, and that's when all those thoughts come in. It's like, oh, can't be bothered to do this, can't be bothered to do that, don't want to speak to so and so, my phone will ring, I will let it be. And I think it kind of highlights the importance of self-care as well. I know there's a lot of organisations now who have become very aware of mental well-being, and understanding the fact that not everyone's going to call in and say they're sick. You know, not understanding that mental illness is also a sickness as well. So there's companies now offering this kind of self-care day, so you can actually say, don't have to explain yourself, I just don't feel mentally okay. And I think that's a positive thing that needs to be kind of spread a lot more, just to give people that space
100%.
to, you know, look after themselves. You know, maybe you can't put life entirely on pause, but giving yourself that room to just breathe and do you. Because sometimes, I guess you can comment on this, sometimes all you need to do is just take a breath, realign yourself, you know, do what works for you. So for me, it might be a daily journal, you know, writing those positive thoughts. I've got a vision board, and like you were saying about the motivational speeches, sometimes that's all I need, you know, that's my medicine in a way. So yeah, I feel like that continuous push on that awareness, first of all, of mental illness, I believe is a problem that everyone faces. I don't think 100%. Anyone's skipping every single day thinking life is bliss. And I think it's also important for companies to also encourage that awareness of it, and also allow people to be open and communicate about it as well, to just help each other.
100%. And on that point about sort of self-awareness, and you touched on it perfectly, I think it's important for people to be aware of what their turn down button is, what it is that they can do to help them de-stress, to help them kind of get that breath out. So you sort of mentioned sort of switching off, and for me again it's sort of quite similar to kind of switch off away from people and go a bit quiet, maybe go to the spa or read a book or jot things down. I think it's important to just be aware of when you are kind of going through that sort of session. And I have noticed in some workplaces they do have that discretionary day off. You don't have to give a reason, I'm just not feeling well. Some other offices I've seen bring in dogs, which can be quite therapeutic for a lot of people. Get to play with an animal, and then they feel a lot better after a 30-minute session with, you know, a little dog. And yeah, I think it's just important to be aware of what our triggers are and how to sort of manage it on a day-to-day basis. And I think also just be aware of our environment as well. So just knowing who's around you and who's going through something, and just trying to be as supportive as possible. I think that for me has been sort of like the biggest sort of thing, because I've sort of in my head consciously tried to make sure that you and other people I'm aware of are okay, and if there's support that can be provided, to provide that support. I think that's important for a lot of people to just sort of think about. Most definitely. I guess sort of on that point, we'll be close to sort of winding this session down, but are there any sort of final thoughts you want to leave with listeners, things to just be aware of, anyone who's going through it now? Any words of encouragement for anyone going through it now?
There is, life is worth living, and what you're going through, if you're going through a cloud, a dark period, it's not going to be there forever. The pain you have is temporary, and there are people out there who can help and support you. And if you can't turn to your family, if you can't turn to friends, then try and seek professional help and support, and that you are loved, and you just need to show that love for yourself by reaching out.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening in. Once again, we appreciate everyone who's listened, and we'll have a lot more episodes coming shortly. As always, you know where you can find us. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we can be emailed at info@tagmeinpodcast.co.uk. So anyone who has found this episode in particular interesting or would like to share your thoughts or appreciation, or if you've had or gone through a similar situation, then please feel free to reach out to us and share your story. Thank you. Thank you all for listening. I hope you appreciated that episode. Now, for those of you who may be feeling down in the dumps or dealing with depression or going through sort of cycles yourself, it's important to take the first step. Now, depression can affect anyone, and you deserve help to feel better. So talk to someone you like and trust, like a teacher, relative, counselor, or friend. In terms of getting support and help, you have Young Minds Crisis Messenger, who provide a free 24/7 crisis support across the UK if you're experiencing a mental health crisis. If you're in need of urgent help, you can text them on YM to 85258. That's YM to 85258. And all texts are answered by trained volunteers with support from experienced clinical supervisors. Alternatively, you also have the Samaritans. So if you're in distress and need support, you can ring Samaritans for free any time of the day or night. And their free phone is 116 123. That is 116 123. Again, that's a 24-hour service. So please feel free to reach out. Thank you.